We're back with Liu Cannon. The album is Clever Rabbits, and you just heard False Hope. Um, just a fabulous little snapshot of anxiety where you see someone dying and your mind goes to the place that we're all about to die soon. The sands of time are rushing through your hands. So take me back to that moment where one painful thing just sort of opens up a new window to the world.
I actually wrote that song before my dad passed. I wrote it when he was first told that he was dying, and I had there were a lot of things happening, a lot of endings at that time for me, and so I actually was like visualizing forward what that death was going to be, and I wanted to write a song that felt really joyful and really euphoric, but like the words and the themes were like very like yeah, like someone's death, because ultimately the process of watching someone die gave me so much joy, and that sounds like, and I'm sure that it's like really like obvious to a lot
That's
of
a
people.
sentence.
Pardon, what was that?
I said, that's certainly a sentence.
Oh, yeah, I guess I don't want to be misconstrued. I think it was like, um, when watch that, the honor of watching someone that I deeply love being there, he was there at my first breath and my first moments in the world, and I was there in his last breaths. And I think I was projecting forward in time what this whole process would be, what those years would look like, losing him and the death itself. And I realized very quickly at that point that because because when you're thinking about death and when you're confronted with death in that way, it naturally just every other emotion gets so much more precious. So you really, when you are happy and when you are joyful, it's so much more poignant. I think it's a real shame actually nowadays that we're really striving for this like never end, like the internet and plastic and all these things we're inventing and creating and really working for, or even ChatGPT and stuff. They want to live forever. Um, and you wonder what that's going to do to our, obviously this is the question right now about our meaning of life and what it's going to do. Um, but that was, zooming the lens back into my little existence. That was my first meeting with how powerful death can be and how important it is to integrate that into our lives. Because we struggle to, it's a big topic and it's scary and it's horrible. And I hated losing him and I wish he was still here. But that's not what happened. And actually I learned so much joy from the whole terrible thing. So did I answer your question? I don't know if I did. Um,
Yeah, I mean, joy is, I don't know if I've ever felt, may, that's a lie. Um, not that I would look at someone passing and say, "Oh, I'm happy
mm,
that they died," but there have been times when people have been suffering for a long time and then they're passing and then it finally happens and I'm like, okay,
mm. Yeah,
they're
yeah,
at peace.
yeah,
So I sort of I guess joy would be the wrong word. I felt relief
yeah.
at death. I felt I felt that, but I don't know if I felt joy or is that kind of what you meant when you said that there's this freedom?
Oh yeah, I say that like when now it comes running to me asking, do I need to be free? I think is that what you're talking about? I think there's it when I talk about that it comes running to me. I think I was more like it's the moment that you grow up. There are two moments we realize you grow up, and one is when you're confronted with death, and the second is when you realize you have responsibility over yourself. I think those are the two things that just make you go like, okay, I'm an adult now. And so that death moment it was like life was running towards me, being like, okay, you say you want to. And at the time, I was like really like, oh, I just want to be free. In many other areas of my life, life would come to me and be like, okay, so you want all these things, but you know that it comes with a huge risk, and you know that, now that you're seeing death, my father lived a really free life, and there's really scary things about it in a way, unpredictable things. So freedom, does it come at a cost? I think that was my question. And I'm saying I never needed anything but hope. I don't know what I'm talking about. There.
I
But
don't think I've ever had someone come on the show and just go, "Oh, I don't know what I'm talking about."
definitely had a strong reason at the time. But I think what I'm trying to say about joy is like, don't get me wrong, throughout all those years and the death itself, there was so little joy in that situation. There really was so little joy. It was terrible, and I can't stress how terrible it really was. But the terror and the pain of that situation meant that when I did feel joy in other things, that joy was so much more appreciated. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And so for that, I could find a silver lining to it to hold on to, which was that it would help me feel, more preciously these other feelings, which I'm so blessed to feel, really. Um,
Well,
as
everything I ever had is gone, all the more reason to carry on.
Yeah, that's it.
That's where we are.
That's the sentiment. Yeah.
That's yeah, one of the more unique death songs I've had the chance to hear. Um, so being out in this world, being out in the world of love, it really does seem like you took some pain away from it. And towards the end of the album, you talk about being the rabbit who knows how to kill the kill. Tell me what you mean there, and I guess we'll go from there.
So the line is, I'm the rabbit that knows how to kill the hill. And it's taken from a folk song a folk story called Gobble Knoll, which is the name of the title track. And it was the particular rendition that I read and was inspired by was one by Alan Garner in his Collected Folk Tales book. It's the first page of the book, and it's called Gobble Knoll, and it says like there once was a hill that ate people. And I was like, wow, this is fucking awesome. What's happening here? And that story goes on to talk about this rabbit that wants to stop this hill from eating people. So he goes into then he has a plan, and eventually he comes out successful, and he's managed to cut out the hill's guts and take it out to the hill, and him and his grandma live off the guts of the hill for the rest of their lives. It's like a happy story for the rabbit. But I took the folk story in my own, like folk is kind of made for. You take bits for yourself and you rewrite and you pass on a tradition. So I wanted to try a bit of that. Um, Actually, I say that now. I actually don't know if I was intending to do that, but I'm going to say that was the intention. I think at the time I just thought that was really cool, and then I was like, and then I had that line like, I think I was walking and I was stomping up this hill, and I was kind of pissed off with something, and where I grew up in countryside, there's lots of like countryside walks and hills and things. So I was like stomping up the hill and I was going, I am the rabbit that knows how to kill the hill. And I was like really getting really furious. And so the song was kind of about, okay, if you are the rabbit that knows how to kill the hill, that's the hill is the rabbit's burrow. It's the home of the rabbit. And if you're wanting to kill it, then you wanted to rid yourself of your own home and your own probably your own identity. For me, my identity and my upbringing and all these things is quite a violent thing to say about your home. And then I realized that then perhaps then if I want to kill my home, maybe I'm not meant to be here and I'm not really a rabbit at all. So it's that moment of self understanding where you maybe think maybe you're beyond the story that you're telling yourself. Well, that's what it played. The role that song played on the album was that it was the moment where you go like, okay, I'm not the person that I can move beyond this story. Yeah.
I think what's fascinating about this album is that there are just so many layers to each line and so specific to both knowing fairly obscure stories and knowing exactly where you were in your life at the moment. Um, I don't know if I've ever had an album on this show that has felt more written like just for one person, yourself. Like I don't know if I've ever had an album that was so mythologically dense that it would be almost impossible to decode. But at the same time, all these references are powerful, and to the extent that you do get the references, it's like, okay, wow, this is really interesting. And um I guess my takeaway would just be I want to know like how you go through life. I want to know how to what extent just in every little situation the myths and foundations are swirling around in your head to, like if you're dealing if you're dealing with a problem, are you reaching out to your present self for a solution, or are you reaching out somewhere into this ether of the past? I don't know if I can conceptualize even the amount of digging through history that it takes to think the way you do.
I think there's a few ways to answer the question. I think the first thing is um, yes, now that it's over, it has. I think during that period of time, there was such an intense self-absorption and a self-mythologizing. Wasn't aware that I was doing it, but that is, like you said, what was kind of happening. And um, I just remember thinking that this could be a bit convoluted and a bit dense, but I just felt like if I'm really truly, this is really just how I feel and how I see it. And if that is so true, then it will just communicate. Like you said, like I was really just very sure about that, even though all these layers were there. Um, so that's like, I think one thing I wanted to say. And then the other thing is I grew up around a lot of books. I think that's maybe a really big part of this. My parents are both writers. And so reading and absorbing like lots of I'm really bad at remembering facts. I'm really bad at numbers. I'm really bad at remembering time and things like that. As you know, I'm really bad at these things. But I'm really there's something about feelings and concepts and stories that really do translate to me, and I finding the links between those things as a way to survive. I think like, pretty bluntly, if you're quite an anxious person, you're kind of scouting the horizon all the time for danger and for things that are like somehow connected to try and be safe. And I think that period of my life, I was very much like that, quite extremely. And so, that means that you're kind of making things like there are things that aren't actually happening that you think are happening, and there are things that are obviously happening that you have no idea. You can't even see truth, really. So I really was living in this like myth land where all these things connected and made sense for me in a really self-absorbed way, and taking on these myths and legends to understand that myself. Um, yeah, it really just came really naturally. I think I feel safest in the written word, to be honest, more so than talking and singing. So that was my biggest pleasure was writing lyrics, um, and reading.
I guess I'll leave things on this question. How do you go from being the rabbit that with the twitching nose scurrying through all the burrows to being the rabbit who can kill the hill and being who you are now and confident enough to look back on this time in your life and identify it as just a clearly different time in your life.
I think you have more fun. I think if you to have fun inherently, you have to be really present, and you have to be really in your body. Like it's one of those things that you stop thinking about anything. Um, so there are three parts to that. To be the rabbit that kills the hill, you need to be very angry, probably. And to be angry, you have to know that you exist as like a separate person, with with your own body, and so to know that you exist gives you anger, and if you're not angry, then you don't even know what what where your existence is. So that's how to kill a hill. I think is to get angry, and then afterwards, when you realize that you've killed the hill, and you don't know if it's you just got to have some fun, um, which is my new discovery, and to not be it's not all about you. I think that's the main thing as well, the real main thing. And so yeah, and to have fun, you're probably doing that in connection with other people. So that's where we are now.
To exist is to be angry. That's
Did I say that? Oh my god, I'm so dramatic.
I'm so dramatic, she giggled. Ah, I like to end my show by asking the artist to pick a song. The only rule is you cannot have had anything to do with its original creation.
Okay.
So, um, I'd like you to I'd like you to pick out a song that works on a mythological level.
Oh, mm. I want to say Chicago by Sufjan Stevens, and I know that Chicago is not technically like he has a lot in his repertoire that is very much based in like religion and based in myths, and but this one is like he's on the story is like he's on this road trip and he's having this like brilliant beautiful realization that all things go, and it's and I think he's almost in the myth in the story. I see it like that, but if I need to give a proper myth song, then I'd go to Joanna Newsom. um hmm. Does Chicago qualify? Can I go with that one?
Yeah, why not?
It's joyful. That's where we are now, no?
All right, we'll have the last song capture the Anne of today and not the Anne of the album.
That's really generous. Appreciate that.
And Liu Cannon, the new album is Clever Rabbits. Thanks so much for coming on Country Pocket.
Thank you, Trevor. It's lovely.